The first episode begins with the host Chris McLean explaining what Total Drama Island is. It's a survivor parody and the newest hot reality show, as he puts it, where 22 teens will compete for $100,000, and after each episode one contestant will be voted off and take the boat of losers and never come back. Let us meet the campers, and I'm gonna try and explain everyone in as few words as possible. We got eager to fit in, mama's boy, goth, party dude, dumb, bitch, criminal, jock, dweeb, laid-back guitar player, surfer girl, know-it-all, confident, sassy, bold, clingy besties, homeschooled, sim, gym, loud, perfectionist, model, and crazy. Where is she? They're all split up into two teams. We got the Screaming Gophers, which consists of Gwen, Trent, Heather, Cody, Lindsay, Beth, Katie, Owen, Lashana, Justin, and Noah. And the rest of the contestants, Jeff, Bridget, DJ, Tyler, Sadie, Izzy, Courtney, Ezekiel, Duncan, Eva, and Harold are Killer Bass. And I'm not gonna mention all the times Duncan's piercings are in the wrong place, because when I'm mentioning this, it has already happened like 10 times. Before the first challenge, they all meet Chef, who's the chef of course, and the co-host. Episode 2 begins right where the first one ends, at the first challenge. This challenge is split up into 3 parts, where the first part is that they will have to jump off a 1,000-foot cliff and land in shark water. The second part is that they will have to carry some boxes back to the camp area, and in these boxes are parts for hot tubs, and building those hot tubs is the last part of the challenge. The Killer Brass goes first, and everyone except for DJ and Courtney jumps right in. The ones that chicken out of the jump will have to wear a chicken hat for the rest of the day, and Katie and Izzy switch teams. Now it's up to the Screaming Gophers, and Chris adds that if they have more people jump to the Killer Bass, they will get a pulled cart to put their crates on. Beth is the only one of the Screaming Gophers that don't jump, which means they win and they get a cart to put their crates on. When the Killer Bass finally carries every crate back to camp, the Screaming Gophers are already halfway finished with their hot tub, and because the Killer Bass has like no team chemistry, their hot tub is really bad. It even breaks when Chris is judging it. So he gives the win to the Screaming Gophers since their hot tub is actually good. Now the Killer Bass has to vote someone to leave, and since DJ and Courtney were the only ones who didn't jump, they are a strong contestant to be voted off. That is until Ezekiel says some misogynistic things which gets him eliminated. The third episode starts with Chris waking up all the campers at 7 AM so that they can run a 20-kilometer run around the lake. Once they're done with the run, they are greeted with a buffet table, and all this was just preparation for the second part of the challenge, the Awakeathon, which is exactly what it sounds like. They have to stay awake, and whoever can stay awake the longest wins. During this challenge, we get some Gwen and Trent flirting. Heather steals Eva's MP3 player and also starts an alliance with Beth and Lindsay by promising them that she will take them to the final 3, if they do what she tells them to do. And I've been thinking, how can she promise that they will go to the final 3? Like, if the other contestants in the team found out about the alliance, they would be outnumbered and voted off one by one. Once they reach the 85-hour mark, only 5 contestants are left: Eva, Duncan, Gwen, Heather, and Trent. And as a last resort, Chris begins to read a History of Canada pop-up book. This makes Eva, Heather, and Trent fall asleep. Between chapters, Chris offers them a bathroom break, which Duncan at first declines, but he gives in after Gwen challenges him to hold it in for another 10 chapters. Duncan falls asleep on the toilet, and the news reaches Chris seconds before Gwen falls asleep. This means the Screaming Gophers win again. It then cuts to the Killer Bass cabin, where Eva is crashing out and throwing stuff everywhere because she can't find her MP3 player. And that's when Heather just happens to walk by and pretends that she found it by the campfire pit and gives it back to Eva. And because of Eva crashing out, she is eliminated. The fourth episode starts the morning after the third episode, where the Killer Bass are all showing signs of being tired since Harold's snoring kept them up all night. This means that Duncan has had 4 nights with no sleep, so before the challenge starts, Duncan lays down and sleeps on one of the bleachers and threatens anyone who wakes him up. The challenge today is just regular dodgeball, and the rules are the same. Best out of 5 rounds. If you get hit by a ball, then you are out, and if you catch a ball, the thrower is out. And of course there are some other rules, but they are not important. During this challenge, Lindsay and Tyler start a relationship, and the Killer Bass get dominated by Screaming Gophers, going down 0-2, and after Heather pointing it out, they realize that they need Duncan's help, but no one wants to wake him up out of the fear that he will kill them. Courtney tells Harold to wake him up since Harold is the worst on the team at Dodgeball and he's the only one they can afford to lose. Once they wake Duncan up, he is informed of their situation and asks why he should help them, to which Courtney tells him that if they lose, she can guarantee that he will be the one going home. After hearing this, he's fine with playing, but on one condition: that they do what he says. With the help of Duncan and his tactic Rush the New Guy, which is basically just everyone focus on one person at a time, they're able to tie at 2-2. In the tie game, it comes down to a 1v1 between Owen and Harold is able to catch the ball Owen throws, which means that Owen is out. The Killer Bass wins their first ever challenge and the Screaming Gophers lose, and because of Noah's lack of involvement in the game, he's the one who gets eliminated. Episode 5 begins with Chris telling the campers to come to a brand new amphitheater, where Chris explains that today's challenge is going to be a talent show later that night. Each team will have to choose 3 contestants that will perform, and they will be judged by a chef. The Screaming Gophers choose Justin to do hot model stuff, Trent to play guitar and sing a song, and Heather to do ballerina dancing. The Killer Bass choose Jeff to do skateboard stunt, DJ to do whatever this is called, and Courtney to play the violin. Unfortunately, while trying to prove to everyone that she can stand on her hands for 20 minutes straight, Bridget accidentally makes a spotlight fall and land on Courtney, crushing her violin and bruising her head. This means that Bridget will have to do a 20-minute handstand as a sub for Courtney. When the talent show starts, the Screaming Gophers start off strong with Justin and Trent both getting high points, while the Killer Bass doesn't have as good of a start as both DJ and Bridget fails in their own way. When it's Heather's turn, instead of doing her ballet dance, she decides to read Gwen's diary, where it basically says that she likes Trent. However, this act is not judged by Jeff, so it's up to Jeff to show his skating skills. Okay, scratch that. It's up to Harold and his beatboxing skills, which is actually enough for them to win this challenge too. And you would think they vote off Heather now, cause what she did to Gwen. But nope, they vote off Justin, who said like 5 words. And I knew that Heather says that she managed to convince Izzy and Owen to vote for Justin, but still. So Justin is eliminated. The 6th episode starts at a campfire pit where Chris tells them that today's challenge is that they will have to survive one night in the woods, and everything they need is at their campsite in the forest. And the first team back the next morning wins. When the Screaming Gophers get to their campsite, Owen notices that there is no food, and after reading the instruction it says that they will have to find their own food. So Owen goes looking for some and eventually comes back with a bunch of fish. At the Killer Bass camp they have set up a tent, and DJ comes back holding a rabbit, and everyone thinks he brought it there to eat. But no, it's his new pet rabbit which he names Bunny. Back at the Screaming Gopher camp while the fish is cooking, they notice that Izzy went to pee over an hour ago. That's when a bear comes out of one of the bushes, so they all climb up into a tree and they think that the bear also ate Izzy. The branch that Lashana was sitting on breaks and she falls down to the bear, and the bear asks her if she's alright, and it's revealed to just be Izzy in a bear costume. When they have all calmed down and started to eat the cooked fish, another bear comes out of one of the bushes, and no one thinks that it's just Chris messing with them, but he discovers pretty fast that it's actually a real bear this time, so they climb up a tree once again. The Killer Bass aren't much luckier, as when Bridget had to go to the toilet in the middle of the night, a bat flies straight into her face, causing her to start stumbling around and eventually kicking an ember from the campfire onto the tent, causing the tent to burn up. And just when things couldn't possibly be worse, it also starts to rain. The next morning, the Killer Bass are the first to arrive back to camp, with the Screaming Gophers not too far after. But since the Killer Bass are missing 2 of their members, the Screaming Gophers are actual winners. That's when Katie and Sadie come running back, and they try to explain everything that happened, but they are interrupted by Courtney telling them that they just lost the challenge because of them. And because of Katie and Sadie making them lose the challenge, one of them is eliminated, and that one is Katie. Episode 7 starts with Sadie crying over her best friend being voted off, and Bridget tries to comfort her by telling her that Katie would have wanted her to keep going. The Killer Bass are all sitting around the campfire when the Screaming Gophers join them, since Owen stank up their cabin and they need some time to air out. And they start to talk and share their biggest fear, and some of them are pretty normal, like DJ being afraid of snakes or Izzy and Owen's fear of flying. But then we have some more obscure ones, like Cody's fear of having to defuse a time bomb under pressure, or Lindsay and Sadie being afraid of bad haircuts. But the most obscure ones are Duncan's fear of Celine Dion music store cardboard cutouts, or Courtney's fear of green jelly. She doesn't say it out loud, but her reaction to it is enough. And of course, the next morning, Chris announces that today's challenge is called Phobia Factor, and that they will have to face their fears to win. Before it's Courtney's turn in the last challenge, the Killer Bass are down 3-7, so it's impossible for them to win. That is until Chris says that if Courtney completes her challenge of having to dive into a tub of green jelly, it will be worth triple the points. But it still won't be enough, because then they will have 6 points instead, but the Screaming Gophers will still have 7, and plus it doesn't matter since Courtney backs down from her challenge. This means the Killer Bass lose again, and since Bridget, Courtney and Tyler were the only ones who didn't complete their challenges, one of them has to be eliminated, and that one is Tyler. The 8th episode begins with Chris telling them that today's challenge is a canoe trip. First they will have to paddle their canoe across the lake to Bonny Island, and when they get there they have to carry their canoe to the other side of the island. When they get to the other side of the island they will have to build a fire that will be judged by Chris, and the first team to paddle back and return their canoe to the beach is the winner of the challenge. Before they go, Chris also warns them about the legend that if you take something from the island you will be cursed forever. When they get to the island and start their hike, the Screaming Gophers first get chased by some woolly beavers and then by some pterodactyl bird things. Once they don't have anything chasing them, they can start their hike to the other side. However, Trent and Lindsay accidentally falls into some quicksand, but luckily they are somewhat saved by Cody. Meanwhile, while running, Jeff gets a small splinter in his leg and is unable to walk. When the Killer Bass get to the other side, the Screaming Gophers have already begun their fire. However, the Killer Bass are the first one to actually get the fire to start thanks to Duncan's lighter. While looking for some wood, Beth finds a statue, and since she missed when Chris warned them about the curse, she just takes it. Courtney realizes that they need more wood for the fire, so Harold gets the genius idea to grab their paddles and throw them into the fire. Izzy makes a handmade fire starter that she created from some tree sap and other things, and she warns her team to stand back as she throws it into the fire, and her fire explodes, which wins them the fire building challenge. This means that the teams just have to get back to the main camp now, and Izzy suggests to the Killer Bass that one of them could swim behind the canoes and push them. The only one big and strong enough to do it is DJ, and he's able to outswim all the Screaming Gophers' canoes and get to the home island first. The Killer Bass wins, and during the elimination ceremony a police helicopter comes and tries to arrest Izzy, but she just screams that they will never catch her alive as she runs away off screen. The 9th episode starts with Chris flying over the cabins in a helicopter, waking them all up, and then on the speaker telling them to come to the campfire pit. He explains that today's challenge is called Paintball Dare Hunt, where they will be split up into 2 teams, Dares and Hunters. Killer Bass Hunters are Harold, Jeff and Bridget, and the Screaming Gophers Hunters are Lashana, Beth, Owen and Lindsay, and their goal is to shoot out the campers who are dressed like Dares. All the Dares get a head start, and Heather decides to sit down and wait for Beth and Lindsay so that they can protect her because of their alliance. When Beth and Lindsay gets to Heather, she she's pissed that it took them so long and orders Lindsay to go and grab some berries and Beth to go and grab a bag of chips from the dining hall. Beth is barely able to steal a bag of chips without getting caught by Chef, and that's when she has a moment of realization that she's doing all this for Heather, someone that she doesn't even like. When Beth gets to Heather, Heather is pissed that it took her so long and that there is only like 11 chips left and that they are in the wrong flavor, so she orders Beth to go and exchange them for a different flavor, but Beth says no. While actually doing the challenge, Beth gets interrupted by Heather, who tells Beth that she can rejoin their alliance if she apologizes for her past actions. But Beth just won't, and that's when Lashana comes and accidentally shoots Heather, and when Heather is screaming at Lashana, Beth shoots her too. Heather takes Lindsay's weapon and starts shooting back at them. The Killer Bass Hunters hear this and also starts to shoot at them. Just then Chris announces that the challenge is over and to report back to camp. Since 4 of the Screaming Gophers are dripping in paint and some aren't even in their costumes anymore, the Killer Bass wins. And Cody gets eliminated since he was mauled by a bear and is now in a full body cast and not so good in challenges anymore. Episode 10 begins in the Killer Bass cabin on the boys' side, where Duncan wakes up and starts doing some push-ups, only to start smelling something disgusting, realizing that it's Harold's dirty underwear inches from his face. They all tell Harold to stop leaving his dirty underwear all over the floor. Harold denies that it is his clothes, but he's the only one that wears that kind, and his mom sews his name onto the label, as DJ and Jeff points out. So Duncan, DJ and Jeff decide that it's time for Harold to be taught a lesson. Later Chris informs them that today's challenge is going to be a cooking challenge, where they will have to cook a 3-course meal and that each team has to appoint a head chef that will create the theme of the meal and oversee the cooking. When looking at the ingredients, Jeff gets the idea to do an Italian theme, and he is named head chef of the Killer Bass. While the Screaming Gophers go a different route picking the head chef, or more, Heather decides that she will be head chef. When the Killer Bass get to the kitchen, split up into 3 pairs. Harold and Sadie will do the antipasto, DJ and Bridget will make the pasta, and Duncan and Courtney will do the dessert. Meanwhile, Jeff goes to their cabin and steals all of Harold's dirty underwear and boxers laying on the floor. He returns to the kitchen and gives DJ a thumbs up, so DJ dumps some water on Harold, so Harold has to go and change. Meanwhile, when the Screaming Gophers get to their kitchen, Heather assigns the pair. Gwen and Lindsay will make a flambe cake, Owen and Trent will make ribs, and Beth and Lashana will make some pineapple skewers and mango dip. Gwen and Lindsay are finished with the flambe cake, but it's not flambeing, so Heather tries to light it on fire and it explodes, which burns off Heather's eyebrows, so she forces Owen to go and grab her makeup bag from their cabin. Back on the Killer Bass side, Harold gets back wearing his pajamas, but he still refuses to admit that it is his dirty clothes laying on the floor. Jeff made some sandwiches that they can eat while they work, which Harold happily takes one, but what Harold doesn't know and only realizes after one bite is that his underwear is in the sandwich, and that he will return all of his clothes once he admits that it is his. Owen finally comes back with Heather's makeup bag and throws it to her, but Lashana manages to take it and pass it to Beth, who passes it to Lindsay, who throws it into the freezer with Heather not far after it, and Lashana closes and locks the door behind her. The judging is about to start and the Screaming Gophers order Owen to guard the food, which they come to regret since he eats the entire plate of ribs. So when Chris has to judge it, he only gets a tiny chunk that has been left on one of the bones. He gives them 2 points as he has had worse, but the Killer Bass is still in the lead with 15 to their 11 when it's time for dessert. The Killer Bass goes first and their dessert gets a 6, which means that the Screaming Gophers will need all 10 points to tie. The dessert looks like a winner, but when Chris takes a piece, the entire cake falls apart, and when taking a bite, Chris nearly chokes to death. The Killer Bass wins again, and as a reward they get to go on a 5-star dinner under the stars, and the Screaming Gophers lose their 3rd challenge in a row. They eliminate Beth because they think that the statue she took is giving them bad luck. During the night, DJ, Duncan and Jeff move out Harold's bed to the dock, so the next morning he wakes up naked and surrounded by all the girls swimming in the water. Harold screams and covers himself with a pillow, and that's when he finally promises that he will never leave his dirty underwear on the floor again. So Jeff throws him back all of his clothes and he runs back to their cabin. The 11th episode begins at breakfast, where Heather is still showing signs of being locked into a freezer and she blames Gwen. Meanwhile, Duncan steals a mug, which Courtney sees and gets worried that he might get kicked off for stealing it. Duncan believes that she is doing this because she likes him, to which she denies and walks away angrily, wondering why she even bothers. Down at the docks, Chris tells them that today's challenge is going to be centered around trust, and that there will be 3 major challenges that will have to be completed by 2 or more members of their team. The first challenge is an extreme freehand rock climb, and the teams are Duncan and DJ against Gwen and Heather. One of each duo will climb while the other one control and make sure that if they fall they don't die. Before they start climbing, DJ gives Jeff his pet bunny, and after some minor inconveniences, Gwen is able to climb up first. The second challenge is a cooking challenge, where Bridget and Lindsay have to cook the fugu blowfish to their respective teammates Jeff and Trent. And if you didn't know, the fugu blowfish has enough venom to kill 30 people. Jeff takes a bite and nothing happens, but when Trent takes a bite he first starts to hit himself, then he screams, and then everything seems normal, until it collapses, and Chris ensures that in 24 hours he will be just as good as new. In between challenges, Bridget and Jeff do a little bit of flirting and go for a swim, but before Jeff jumps into the water he remembers that he has Bunny in his pocket, so he puts Bunny on a lifeguard chair. But when they're done swimming and go up, they see Bunny first get eaten by a snake, then that snake gets taken by an eagle, and then the eagle gets eaten by a shark. The final challenge is actually 3 blindfold challenges. The first of these challenges is the blind William Tell, where one teammate will have an arrow on their head, and the other teammate will be blindfolded and shoot apples at them, hoping to knock the arrow off their head. The teams are Owen and Lashana against Courtney and Sadie. While their first shot misses, Lashana eventually hits the arrow, winning them a point. However, Sadie still continues to shoot, and it takes Chris to go up to her and shake her for her to stop. And before collapsing, Courtney promises that Sadie is going down. The second of the blind challenges are the blind trapeze, and for them to not be seriously injured, he has a pond under it. It is just that the pond is filled with electric jellyfish. Heather and Bridget will have to stand blindfolded on a platform until their respective teammates Harold and Lindsay tell them to jump, and then they hopefully catch them. Before this challenge, DJ asks Jeff where Bunny is, and then Jeff tells him that Bunny ran away, which makes DJ extremely sad. Duncan overhears this and walks away. At first, Bridget does a jump, but Harold convinces her to do it as he catches her. On the other side, Lindsay tells Heather to jump too early, causing Heather to fall into the water, which gives the killer bass a point. The third challenge is the blind toboggan race, and each team will have one driver and one navigator, where the driver will be blindfolded and the navigator will have to shout out directions. DJ, who is still really sad about Bunny, doesn't really steer when Jeff tells him to. That's until about halfway, when Jeff points out that Duncan has found Bunny, and DJ pulls down his blindfold and sees Bunny and decides to lock in. And they win. But since DJ pulled down his blindfold, they are disqualified, meaning the Screaming Gophers are the actual winners. Courtney goes up to Duncan and says that she can't believe that he actually got DJ a new bunny, and that he's actually a good guy. Duncan first tried to deny it, but when she says that she saw him do it, he confesses to doing it, and she promises to not tell anyone. And as Courtney promised Sadie that she was going down, Sadie gets eliminated, and is reunited with Katie again. The 12th episode starts with Chef on the loudspeaker telling everyone to report to the docks now. At the docks, Chef explains that today's challenge will not be an easy one, and that he does not expect everyone to come out alive. His order is to make sure that one by one the campers will be removed from the challenge until only one is left standing, winning in their team the challenge. When a camper is ready to give up, they will walk to the end of the dock and ring the bell, and day one does not end until someone quits. He then orders everyone to get down to the beach. On the beach, their first challenge is that each team has to hold a canoe over their head, and no one eats lunch until someone quits. After almost an entire day, Lindsay declares that she can't do it anymore and goes and rings the bell, and everyone drops their canoe, and Chef orders everyone to go to the main lodge since it's time for dinner. At the main lodge, he tells them that they only have 10 minutes to eat until night training starts, and their food is leftovers from breakfast taken right from the trash. The night training turns out to just be them dancing Michael Jackson's Thriller dance, until Duncan stops the music, which gets him ordered to do 20 push-ups. Back in the main lodge, Chef tells them that the next challenge they will have to compete is a 300-word essay about how much they love him, and if anyone falls asleep or fails, they will be disqualified. When they are done, Chef tells them to go to bed and be ready for the next challenge at 5 AM. The next challenge is to run a muddy obstacle course until everyone can complete it in under 1 minute. After running it a bunch of times, Harold is forced to leave and go to the infirmary, and as Lashana is getting stuck in the mud, Duncan says fallen soldier I salute you, which gets him punished with 20 push-ups. Duncan thanks Chef and kisses him on the nose, and that gives him order to stay one night alone in the boathouse. Courtney goes and checks on Duncan, and at the boathouse, Courtney asks Duncan why he always breaks the rules, and Duncan asks Courtney why she always follows them, and they go back and forward with even some flirting in between, and Duncan is able to convince Courtney to break the rules and go and steal some food from Chris and Chef. Back at their cabin, all the other campers are happily eating some of the stolen goods. Courtney, who is still high on adrenaline, accidentally eats too much, so she has to run out and throw up. Duncan, who followed her, is impressed, and Courtney tells him that once she did something bad, it was so much fun that she just wanted more. So Duncan tells her that giving him a kiss would be pretty bad, and she claims that he's not her type, just before she kisses him. And just as she walks away, Jeff and DJ comes out, and Jeff congratulates him. Chef then announces that the remaining campers' last challenge start tomorrow morning at 7 AM. The last challenge is that the remaining 6 campers will have to hang upside down from a tree. Duncan is the first to fall, followed by Heather, who voluntarily jumps down, and then Owen, who falls on Heather. Then Courtney falls, and Jeff is the last one to fall, which only leaves Gwen left hanging, and she and the Screaming Gophers win. And the one who gets eliminated is Courtney, to everyone's surprise. She demands a recount, and Duncan adds that he knows for a fact that 3 people didn't vote for her. And as she is leaving in the boat of losers, Duncan throws her a wooden skull that he made for her. We then pan back to Harold, who is standing around the fire pit, when a montage of every time Duncan messed with him in this episode is shown. We then see Harold tampering with the votes to get Courtney voted off as payback against Duncan. Let me say that again. As payback against Duncan, he votes off Courtney. Episode 13 starts with Chris flying over the cabins, waking everyone up. He lands and announces that today's challenge will be split up into 3 challenges: extreme sofa bed skydiving, extreme rodeo moose riding, and extreme sea-doo water skiing, and that the winning team will get to use a mobile shower. The first challenge will have Didi and Trent skydive from a plane, while the rest of the team try to move a sofa bed to where the skydiving teammate is landing. When they get to the drop zone, Trent is starting to have second thoughts, so Didi tries to give him a pat on the back and ensures him that he will land on a mattress. But Didi ends up accidentally pushing Trent off the plane instead, and out of panic he forgets to pull the chute, and he also misses the bed sofa and just plummets into the ground. Before jumping, Didi tries to remember in which order to pull the cords for his chute to activate, but in the air he manages to pull them in the wrong order. But he still manages to get his parachute to work, and thanks to the ground team he manages to land on a sofa bed, winning them this challenge. The second challenge challenge is bull riding but on a moose. Jeff and Leshana are the chosen contestants. Jeff is first up, and right when they open the cage to the moose, it instantly kicks Jeff off. When it's Leshana's turn, the moose breaks out of his cage, but Leshana still manages to hang on and win her team this challenge. The final challenge is to water ski through a race course and try to take as many flags as possible before crossing the finish line. And the jet ski thing will be driven by a member of the opposing team. Harold will ski behind Heather and Lindsay behind Duncan. Harold is first up, and even though he isn't skiing, he is more being dragged after Heather. He still manages to grab all the flags, and for Heather to not be disqualified, he has to drive through the finish line, giving the Kilobats 5 points. To stop this, Heather pulls out a knife and tries to cut Harold's throat, but after a minor inconvenience, Harold is distracted enough for him to go headfirst into some rocks, causing him to lose the challenge. When it's Lindsay's turn, she has no problem with keeping her balance, and she is able to grab all 5 flags. So for her to not cross the finish line and win, Duncan deliberately crashes into some rocks, but Lindsay still manages to cross the finish line and win it for the Screaming Gophers. And this time, Harold gets eliminated. The 14th episode begins in the main lodge at breakfast, where Chris informs them that today's challenge will be boys versus girls, and that all the girls will move into the Screaming Gophers cabin and all the guys into the Killer Bass cabin, and that today's challenge no one will be eliminated and that they're only fighting for a reward. Chris tells them that today's challenge is called the Brunch of Disgustingness, where they will be getting a 9-course meal and each member will need to eat each dish for them to win a round. The winning team will get a 2-day stay at the local 5-star resort. The first dish is a beef testicle bourguignon, and none of the boys can bring themselves to eat it, so the girls take their chance and win this round, going up 1-0. The second dish is a pizza with live grasshoppers, tangy jellyfish sauce and live anchovies, which the guys have little to no problem with, and they tie 1-1. The third dish is earthworms covered in snail slime sauce and hairballs. The guys try to eat it with a blindfold on and a clothespin on their nose, which works and they win the round, going up 2-1. The fourth dish is called French bunion soup with hangnail crackers, and the guys just can't do it. However, on the girls' side, Bridget gets the idea to pouring it straight down their throats, winning them this round, tying it up 2-2. At the final dish, the score is still tied 2-2. Said final dish is hot dog made out of dolphin, which no one eats. So they do a tie round where whoever drinks the most shots of blended cockroaches out of Owen and Leshana wins. For the first 6 shots they are neck and neck until Leshana reaches a limit, and no one who doesn't even look in control drinks 3 more, which means the guys win and get to go to the 5-star resort. Episode 15 begins with the guys coming back from the 5-star resort, where Chris announces that all teams are now officially dissolved, meaning that it is everyone for themselves. He also announces that 2 contestants, Eva and Izzy, are coming back. He then tells them to report to the amphitheater, where he will tell them about today's challenge. There they are seated on a multi-level panel. Chris explains that today's challenge is a torture game called Say Uncle, where one camper at a time will have to spin a wheel of misfortune to select the method used, and if the camper refuses to do what it lands on, or can't last the required 10 seconds, they are disqualified. And the winner of the challenge will not just have immunity in today's elimination, but also gets a luxury trailer. Duncan is first up, and he gets turtle puck shots, where he has to stand in a hockey goal while Chef shoots snapping turtles at him. And if he can last the required 10 seconds, he gets to go to the next round, and he completes it. Lindsay is second, and she gets the marshmallow waxing, which is just a face mask ribbed with melted marshmallow. And since she completed it without complaining once, she gets to choose the next person and their challenge. But if the person completes their challenge, she will be eliminated. However, she declines to offer, but Eva forces her to pick Bridget to do the barrel of leeches, since Eva is still pissed off at Bridget for voting her off. However, before she jumps into the barrel, Jeff volunteers to do it instead, but he jumps out before the 10 seconds and gets disqualified. After a bunch of rounds, it's down to a 1v1, Eva against Leshana in a sudden death round. Leshana's final challenge is the grizzly bear log roll, where she has to battle a grizzly bear in log rolling, and to win she must last 10 seconds. At first the bear is in control, but Leshana is able to take control and eventually jump and stop the log from rolling, which means that Leshana wins the challenge and gets immunity in today's elimination and the luxury trailer, and they eliminate Eva again. The 16th episode starts with Chris in a pirate costume shooting a cannonball, and then through a loudspeaker announcing to all the campers to meet him at the amphitheater in 5 minutes, where he will tell them about today's challenge. Today's challenge will be a good old-fashioned treasure hunt, but they won't be looking for the actual treasure chest, just for the keys to one. And one of these chests will even give one of them invincibility. So Chef pulls out a bucket for the campers to grab a clue from that will lead them to where one of the keys is located. After getting his key fairly easy, Trent helps Gwen get her key from a skunk hole by flooding it and flushing the skunk out, so Gwen can grab her key, and as a thank you, Gwen kisses Trent. Heather and Lizzie sees this, and Heather knows that boyfriend and girlfriend is just another way to say alliance, and that her alliance needs to be the only alliance. So she comes up with a plan to write a letter to Gwen from Trent where it says to meet him at the docks at 5 PM. Trent is then led to the docks by Lindsay, where Heather begins to fake cry, and she tells him that Gwen has been so mean to her and that she doesn't know why. Heather then tells him that Gwen thinks his music sucks and that she's only using him to get further in the game. And for some reason Trent believes Heather's lies, and that's when Gwen comes, and just when she is able to see them, Heather kisses Trent, which crushes Gwen. In the girls' cabin, Leshana comes back after getting her key and sees Gwen crying and asks what's wrong, and Gwen tells her what happened. So Leshana goes and tells everyone what happened and to either vote for Heather or Trent. That's when Chris tells everyone to meet him at the campfire in 10 minutes and to bring their keys. And Heather of course wins invincibility, which means that Trent gets eliminated. Episode 17 starts with Chris explaining that today's challenge is hide and seek and that they will have 10 minutes to hide before Chef comes and looks for them. Chef will try and spray them with a water gun when they are caught, and if they manage to not get sprayed they can try to run to home base. A lifeguard share on the dock. And there are 3 ways for them to win invincibility. The first being don't get discovered in your hiding place. The second, run to home base before Chef blasts you. And the third, once you've been caught, help Chef find the other campers. During the challenge while trying to find a hiding spot, Owen gets dragged into a cave where the remaining guys are. Duncan tells them that he realized that there are more girls than boys left, so he forms a guys alliance with them to make sure that they don't get outnumbered and voted off. And Duncan tells them to find a new hiding spot since he was there first. Meanwhile, both Heather and Lindsay are caught, with Izzy getting caught not far after. While hiding, Bridget accidentally scares a family of skunks, causing them to spray her and her to scream, which gets her caught. Both Owen and DJ are hiding on the roof of the main lodge until their combined weight is too much and they both fall down, where they are caught by Heather, who goes and leaves them with Chef and tells him where and that she found them, winning her invincibility again. Gwen and Jeff are both caught, and while searching for Duncan, Owen accidentally tells Gwen about the guys' alliance. Chef eventually finds Duncan and is confused that he hasn't found Lashana when he realizes that she's hiding in the water, and when they get to the dock, there she is sitting on the lifeguard chair, also winning her invincibility. And in the end, Bridget is eliminated, but before she leaves, Jeff reveals that he didn't vote for her, and right before they kiss, Jeff runs away because of her skunk smell. Later that night, we see Jeff hanging upside down in a tree as punishment for not voting for Bridget. The 18th episode begins with everyone chilling when they're interrupted by Jeff singing and crying. Kristen tells them over the loudspeaker that their challenge awaits at the Arts and Crafts Center. At the Arts and Crafts Center, Chris explains that he used to be an outhouse, but now it's where Chef parks his motorcycle. Kristen tells them that today's challenge is for them to build their own bikes with materials from a bike depot. After some hours, Chris announces over the loudspeaker that it's time for the bikes to be judged and to meet him at the Arts and Crafts Center. Once there, he compliments most of their bikes and he announces that they will be racing their bikes on the beach. It's just that the drive will be picked randomly and that everyone will pick a name out of a helmet to see whose bike they will be driving. And that if your bike makes it across the finish line, you get to race in the final round for invincibility. The racers that cross the finish line are Lindsay on Heather's bike, Duncan on Lindsay's bike, Gwen on Owen's bike, and Owen on Duncan's bike. In the final race, the campers will get to race their own bikes. They will race the course and avoid all the hidden pitfalls. First, they will be dodging landmines, then maneuvering through an oil slick, and lastly jumping over a pool of piranhas. And the first contestant to cross the finish line wins invincibility, and the last contestant to cross is eliminated. Heather is able to win with Lindsay coming in second, but since neither Duncan or Owen passed the finish line, Lindsay is technically the last person past the finish line, and this means she is eliminated if Heather doesn't give Lindsay her invincibility, which she won't since it's too risky. That's when Lindsay realizes that Heather is actually really mean, and that all the bad stuff people say about her is true, like how she's a two-faced, backstabbing, lying little, the rest of what she says is censored, and that she stood up for Heather since she thought they were BFFs, and she backs down and says it again, but Lindsay is still eliminated. The 19th episode begins with the remaining campers watching a horror movie, and when it ends they wonder what today's challenge is going to be and where Chris is. They hear a boat engine down at the docks. They meet Chef, who's packing up the boat of losers with a bunch of bags, but when he notices all the campers he jumps on the boat and he and Chris drive off with frightened looks, leaving a bag behind. In this bag they find a newspaper about an escaped psycho killer with a chainsaw and a hook who's on the loose. Heather just thinks that Chris is messing with them, so she goes take a shower. Gwen says that it doesn't matter if it's real or not and suggests that they should go back to the campfire and talk strategy. And as everyone is walking there, Izzy drags Owen away with her. We then see Owen and Izzy in the forest, and Owen realizes that couples making out in the forest are the first to be killed. But Izzy points out that they are not making out. But Izzy asks Owen if he wants to make out, and he says yes, so she drags him into some nearby bushes and starts making out. That's when the killer appears and captures them and takes them to a tent where Chris is sitting and monitoring them. He explains that the killer is actually Chef and that today's challenge was for them to first see and then survive a horror movie. Back at the campfire, Gwen has made drawings of everyone and she notices that DJ and Jeff are missing, and Duncan tells her that DJ needed to go and pee, so he took Jeff with him. DJ makes Jeff promise to not leave him under any circumstances, but that promise is almost broken immediately as Jeff hears an ice cream truck and starts running towards it. Inside the bathroom, DJ sees Heather shaving her legs and wearing a lime green face mask, which scares DJ and he runs and screams all the way to the tent, where he's told the truth, and Chris points out that DJ lost without even seeing Chef. Both Heather and Jeff were captured without much of a challenge. At the campfire, Gwen asks Duncan where Lashana went, and he tells her that Lashana went to get something to eat, and Lashana is able to grab some brownies, but she's also caught. Gwen curses out everyone except for her and Duncan, and she's disappointed that no one listened to her because she actually wanted to help them. Duncan pulls out 2 burning sticks and lights Gwen's paper on fire, and she goes to get some water. And Duncan hears the killer whisper his name, so he goes down to the docks to fight him. When Gwen comes back with some water, she notices that Duncan is not there and gets so angry that she decides to go and get a sandwich. At the docks, Duncan starts throwing stuff at the killer, but he's eventually out of stuff. So when the killer attacks Duncan with the chainsaw, he gets stuck and Duncan is able to take it and win the challenge. Back at the tent, they are celebrating Duncan for winning when they see on one of the cameras that Gwen is face to face with the real killer, and they all run over to save her. When they arrive, they yell at Gwen that that is the real killer, and Gwen screams and kicks the killer several times in the face, which offends the killer and he walks away. This makes Gwen the real winner of the challenge, and unfortunately DJ gets eliminated since he screamed the most without the killer even being near. The 20th episode begins at breakfast where Chris explains that today's challenge will have them catching a wild animal and bring it back to camp unharmed. And the reward for winning is a meal of all their favorite foods. They meet at the boathouse where each camper draws a random animal from a hat. Owen gets a chipmunk, Lashana gets a frog, Duncan gets a raccoon, Gwen gets a duck, Jeff gets a beaver, Izzy gets a deer, and Heather gets a bear. They get 60 seconds in the boathouse to gather any equipment that might help, and once those 60 seconds are over, the challenge starts. Gwen is the first to get her animal back to camp, winning her the challenge, with Duncan coming in a close second, and he offers to help Heather get her animal. After Jeff, LaShawn and Owen all get their animals back to camp, leaving only Izzy to find a deer, and Heather plus Duncan with finding a bear. Izzy finally managed to shoot a deer with the tranquilizer gun that she picked up in the boathouse. Then Duncan and a bear come running by, and Duncan asks Izzy if she is in Heather. Right then Heather falls out of her bush, and she was shot with a tranquilizer gun since she was wearing deer antlers. And for like the 5th or 6th time, Heather manages to avoid elimination. Like, everyone is pretty open about how much they dislike her, but they still haven't voted her off. Izzy gets eliminated instead, and she just throws a smoke bomb on the ground and disappears. Episode 21 begins with Chris flying over the cabins in a helicopter, waking everyone up. When he lands, he tells them that in today's challenge they will have to compete in 3 different challenges in 3 teams of 2 and 3 arms per team, as they will be handcuffed to their teammates, and the winning team both gets invisibility. The teams are Jeff and Gwen, Heather and Owen, and Duncan and Lashana. The first challenge is an eating challenge where each team has to choose one eater and one feeder. The eater will have both their hands behind their back, while the feeder does exactly what it sounds like. They feed the eater the food. Owen and Heather wins this pretty easy, giving them 1 point. The second challenge will have them canoe to Boney Island while still handcuffed. There Chris tells them that the second part of the challenge is that they will have to return the statue that Beth took last time they were there, and that they will need to return it to a cave. However, they need to be fast, as the longer they hold the statue, the more cursed they will become. And as a final twist, one of them will have to piggyback the other. Jeff and Gwen may not have been the first one to get to the cave, but they are the first one to return their piece of the statue, winning them this challenge and getting them 1 point. The final challenge is to build a totem pole of 3 sculptures of the heads of everyone who's been eliminated in the order they were voted off, with Ezekiel at the bottom and Izzy at the top. Duncan and LaShawn are the first to complete and have everyone in correct order, winning them the challenge and getting them a point. As it's all 3 teams tied, no one gets invincibility. They vote off Jeff because he's nice and gets along with everyone, which makes him a threat. In the 22nd episode, we see that all the eliminated campers are chilling on a luxury resort called Playa de Luces, which is just around the corner from the main island. During this episode, they talk about who they would like to win and what they've been up to. And in the end, they get to decide who gets eliminated, and we get the most bullshit elimination, since just saying a person's name counts as a vote for them to be eliminated. And after getting 9 votes, where 2 are from a parrot, Lashana is eliminated. Episode 23 begins with it poured down rain on the island. It's raining so much that the next morning when everyone wakes up, both cabins are flooded away. The cabins and the campers all wash up on shore on the other side of the island, where Duncan thinks that they should stay and wait for the rescue team to come and rescue them, but Gwen thinks that they should build a raft and try to get back to the main camp. However, Heather thinks that Chris is just messing with them, and she decides to go for a walk where she finds a big tree house. And after not getting along on what to do next, they decide that it's every camper for themselves. After realizing that it's a stupid idea to go their separate ways, they all reunite at the treehouse again. They also reunite with Owen, who wasn't in the cabin but still got flooded away. And after 9 minutes of isolation, he started to talk to a coconut, which he named Mr. Coconut, and after 11 minutes he grew a full-sized beard. They see Smoke and go and investigate, where they meet Chef and Chris, who welcomes them to the formerly secret production camp. No one is eliminated in this episode, unless you want to count Mr. Coconut as a camper. The 24th episode begins with all the campers waking up in the middle of the forest. There they met with Chef, who's the host today, since Chris is away hosting an award show. And fun fact, this is the only challenge episode in Total Drama that Chris does not appear in. Chef explains that in today's challenge they will have to find their way back to camp. He also paired them up in teams of 2. One team Duncan and Owen, and the other team Heather and Gwen. And he gives each team a bag, which consists of everything they will need to survive the challenge. Each bag consists of different items from the other. For instance, the girls' bag has a compass, while the boys' bag has a map. And the first team to touch the totem pole back at camp wins invincibility. During this challenge, both teams trick each other and steal each other's supply a bunch of times. But when night comes, the guys have managed to steal all the girls' supplies. And because of this, the guys offer to bunk and set up camp together, which the girls agrees on. Since Heather's plan is to make the boys think that they're helping them, and then in the morning steal all their stuff. Which is exactly what they do, which makes especially Duncan pissed. Owen then smells some sticky buns that Chef made, so he runs towards them, running right past the girls, but unfortunately he also runs straight past the pole and goes for the sticky buns instead, and the girls touch the pole first, winning them the challenge and invincibility. This means that either Duncan or Owen will be eliminated, and Chef chooses to eliminate Duncan. The 25th episode begins after breakfast at the amphitheater, where Chris explains that they ran out of ideas, so they asked the already eliminated campers for ideas, and it turns out they had a lot. So they made a giant spin the bottle with pictures of every eliminated camper for today's challenge called I Triple Dog Dare You, where each remaining camper will spin the bottle and the camper it lands on determines the dare. And the spinner can either choose to do the dare themselves and win a get out of a dare freebie, or pass the dare to someone else. And if a camper refuses to do a dare, they are eliminated. The first round, both Gwen and Heather pass their dares to each other, and Owen dares himself and gets a get out of a dare freebie. The second round, everyone challenges themselves and each gets one get out of a dare freebies. The third round, both Gwen and Heather once again dare each other. However, Heather uses her get out of a dare freebie on this dare, and Owen also once again challenges himself and wins another get out of a dare freebie. After a bunch of rounds of Gwen and Heather daring each other and Owen taking every dare he's given, he has a total of 20 get out of a dare freebies. Gwen makes a deal with Owen that if he helps her take down Heather, she will split her winnings with him. He agrees to this and gives Gwen half of his get out of dare freebies. And after passing every dare to Heather, Gwen spins the wheel and it lands on Lindsay, and Heather is relieved, since Lindsay couldn't possibly come up with anything bad. But she's extremely wrong, since Lindsay's dare is to let Chef shave your head. And of course Gwen dares Heather with it. While sitting in a barber chair, Heather starts having doubt, and right before Chef touches her hair with the razor, she kicks the razor out of its hand, causing it to fly and land on her head, and for the chair to fall backwards. And when the chair returns upright, we see Heather in shock as parts of her hair have been shaved off. And although she did get her head shaved, she actually never accepted the dare before it happened. Therefore, Heather is finally eliminated. The 26th episode starts with Chris welcoming back the 20 campers who have been eliminated and for them to pick a side of the bleachers to show their support towards the camper they want to win. Chris asks Owen and Gwen what they would do with the money if they won. Gwen, even though she would split half of it with Owen as promised, still leaves her with a lot of money and will use it to travel and then go to university to study art school. And if Owen wins, he will throw a huge yacht party and invite every camper, and after that answer almost everyone switches to his side. Chris tells them that the final challenge is the reacted Olympics rally race. First Owen needs to put on a cow hat and Gwen a chicken hat. In the first part they must climb a flagpole and grab the flag from the top. Next they must cross a 300-meter balance beam or a garage carrying an eagle's egg. And the last part of the race is a long distance run to the finish line where the first person to cross wins. At the first part, with the help of their respective supporters, they both grab their flags. The second part, Gwen is able to get over the balance beam first with Owen not too far after her. During the long distance run, Trent is trying to show Gwen how much he loves her by carrying a boulder all the way to the finish line. At the finish line, Lindsay sees that Owen is losing, so Izzy comes up with a plan. When they begin to near the finish line, Gwen is still in the lead and Owen is barely keeping up, and Trent, who is still carrying the boulder, starts to fall behind and meets up with Owen, and they both start to crawl on the ground out of exhaustion. Back at the finish line, Izzy comes out with a plate of hot brownies and Lindsay with a giant fan, and they blow the smell of the brownies towards the campers. After Owen catches a smell of the brownies, he gets enough energy to run past Gwen and crash straight into Izzy and cross the finish line. Trent goes and comforts Gwen and says that at least they get to go to a great party, and he starts to walk away. So Gwen reminds him that he didn't pick up the boulder, so he picks up her instead and says that he will only put her down if she goes out with him, which she happily agrees to do. Later that night around the campfire, Owen is announced as winner of Total Drama Island, and after Owen is handed his check for the money, he, Duncan and Jeff picks up Chris and throws him into the water, which Jeff is very amused by, only to realize that he is next as the three boys run after him. And I know that they made two versions, one where Owen wins and one where Gwen wins, but I picked the one that I think is canon and the one that I watched. And you probably thought that that was the end, but nope, there's actually a 27th episode. In the 27th episode, Chris offers Owen one final challenge, a race to find a briefcase that contains $1 million. In exchange for a chance for everyone to compete, he has to give up his $100,000 that he just won. At first no one else but Owen wants to search, but after realizing that they can't just basically let Owen win $1 million, they all go looking for it and they all split up into teams to search. After the briefcase with the million in it gets passed around every team, it eventually ends up in the water along with 14 of the contestants. The briefcase gets eaten by a shark, meaning that the 14 contestants in the water all tie and get another shot at winning the $1 million in season 2.